What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson, joined by Brady Quinn and Douzable. Did the show in the branded studio together. Brady, you're too tall for that.
Did you like sleep on one side of your face, like in the sun? It looks like one side got more sun than the other.
One side is a little redder than the other.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you like fall asleep in like a lounge this weekend over Labor Day weekend? What happened?
Yes.
He said yes.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's probably, I was on a boat. I was on the beach. I mean, like, I don't know. I think it's actually, you know what it is?
Only one side got all the sun.
It may be the lighting in here. I'll fix it. I'll have my tech guy fix it after the show. You're
before we get into it, I just want to know, did you guys make a friendly wager this week?
No, I was thinking about that too. He should probably have fixed after NC State gets beat this week.
Yeah. What's the spread? I haven't even actually seen it. I would guess y'all are gonna be favored because you're a top 10 team.
Thank you for acknowledging that. Let me take a quick gander here.
Actually, it is now that you're like asking about like my issues with the sun here. It is actually a lighting situation, which I may or may not fix in the middle of the show. So if I move and stand up, that's what it is. I'm not burnt on one half of my face. Is what I'm telling you.
According to our CBS Sports app, Notre Dame's a 7.5 point favorite.
Ooh,
yeah,
it's a lot of points.
How we feeling, Willie?
How good is your offensive line? What do you want to do for a friendly wager, by the way?
They have a surefire top 10 pick.
Yeah, I was like, both our tackles are going to be drafted after this year. I mean, you tell me. Yeah.
Well, I'm asking because UConn sort of mauled our defensive front. Like we,
it's going to be a long day for y'all then.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, well, so we lost two of our best linebackers, including Drake Thomas. He really should have been ACC Defensive Player of the Year to the NFL. And as a result, I think our younger linebackers were struggling when the defensive front got blocked to really recognize where UConn was going.
How about you just stop talking? You wear a number 10 jersey if y'all lose, and then I'll wear some NC State Tuffy gear or something, whatever you send me. If NC State wins.
If NC State wins, I will wear a Brady Quinn jersey. If Notre Dame wins, a 7.5 point favorite on the road wins. Oh, look at top 10 team wins a game. Area man brags about it.
Here? So hold on. Do you want to do points?
No.
Yeah,
no. We're gonna
go.
No. We're gonna do, but to amplify the situation because NC State is a 7.5 point dog. If NC State wins, you have to shotgun an old toughie on camera.
Oh,
okay.
Deal. All right. Excellent.
So if NC State wins and covers, correct?
Well, if NC State wins, they'll cover because they're a dog.
Well, no.
It's just straight up, right?
So you're saying it's a straight up bet, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, if NC State wins, they would ipso facto cover because they're underdog. Yeah. And Notre Dame just has to win.
I'm saying though, you're not saying they just had to cover. They have to win.
NC State?
Yes, they have to win. But there's no cover play. There's no cover play.
Okay. No,
I understand what we're talking about here. I'm saying the cover does not matter for NC State, correct?
It's a straight up bet.
Straight up bet.
Don't zoom in on me while they're tiny. Yeah, we don't need to do this. Let's just even boxes here. Yes, correct. If actually this is a better setup here because you guys, there's two of you there. Yes, if Notre Dame does not have to cover, if they win, but do I have to go buy a Brady Quinn jersey?
No, we can send you one.
Yeah, you send me a Brady Quinn jersey and I'll wear it on the show. I actually have a very small Brady Quinn football show T-shirt somewhere around here.
Can I actually make this request too while we're at it? If Notre Dame wins and covers, okay, can I get a Brinson sucks hat? I've never got one of those. I've wanted one forever. You never send me one.
Yes, I don't have one. I have my hat says I suck. Because I'm Brinson. Lewis, our podcast listener, sent Brinson. We will effort to get you a Brinson sucks hat as best we can. Yes.
Okay. Just give me breeches. He doesn't wear enough anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, you promised you'd wear it on the Big Noon Kickoff show on Fox Sports.
Didn't say that.
Yes, you did. Oh, how about this? If NC State wins and reverse covers, if NC State wins by more than a touchdown, you have to wear a Brinson sucks hat on the Big Noon Kickoff show.
How am I going to get away with that?
There's no way he's
no one's going to look at me and go like, you can't do that.
You do whatever you want.
Picture of it on the set.
I'll try with this. I'll try to plant it. All right. If this scenario plays out, I'll try to plant it in the crowd and then grab it off a fan and put it on at the end of a segment. How about that?
Exactly. Okay. But if NCAA wins by more than a touchdown, yes. You'll try to do that.
The reverse cover will be 7.5. That's what the number says.
They're
going to 8.
Got to win by 8.
Yeah. Nice. This is not a cover play, is it? All right.
I was just making sure the rules were clearly defined as far as when I would have to shotgun a beer. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fine. If NCAA wins outright, you're shotgunning an old Tuffy.
Is it an IPA? Is that a Pilsner?
No, it's a lager. I got some old ones.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. We can shotgun a lager.
Yeah, you can shotgun it. Speaking of college football, we'll dive into the NFL in a minute. But and by the way, if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, hit that like button, smash the subscribe button. Tell us your favorite college matchup for this week, or NFL matchup, whatever you want. Prime Deion Sanders and Colorado are ranked as well after beating TCU. I mean, I'm curious what you guys think about Deion as a coach, because there's a huge argument down at the beach while I was burning half of my face this past weekend about whether Prime is a good coach or like a good recruiter. Like what do you think about his coaching style? And is he a great coach? Is he a great recruiter? What do you think about Prime and what he's done at Colorado in general?
I think both. I thought that they were really coached well in that game versus TCU. I mean, of course, there were some issues on the defensive side. You can't give up that many points. But on offense, I mean, if you look at what Shedeur Sanders did, right, the cool, calm collectiveness in the pocket, he threw from within the pocket when he needed to get on the outside. He did that as well. And Brady, you can speak to this as a quarterback. Sometimes you got to manipulate the pocket as far as drifting left, drifting right, and you just always look comfortable throwing from different places on the field. So I think Deion, for one, is a great recruiter because, I mean, you don't get Travis Hunter if you're not a great recruiter, right? And the other receivers, me and Brady were talking about this yesterday here, Xavier Weaver and Jimmy Horn Jr. Like, those guys were at USF, right? Now, they were good players, but, there's been teams that have been trying to get them for the last couple of years. I know for a fact Xavier Weaver, there's been teams, because I know Jeff Scott, I caught a lot of the American games, so I've talked to him throughout the years. I know there were teams that were in his DMs trying to get him. And for Deion to be able to get those two guys was monumental. But again, I would have to say he's a great recruiter and a great coach, because again, the way they executed on offense was second to none. And being 20.5-point dogs in that game, to go into that type of territory in Texas where football is God. Right. You know that the fans are going to be there. You're the underdog heavily. People are saying all types of stuff to you in the background. I think it shows how good a coach Deion is and how good of a recruiter he is.
Yeah, he's both in this case. And I think as any good or great head coach, you have to be. But that was probably one of the things that, for whatever reason, and I think it's probably because of how Deion Sanders presents himself, that people get lost in the presentation. They get lost in the brand, the prime, and all that. And they forget the fact that he's a good coach. He knows ball. He can oversee all of it and coach guys up, not only at the position that he played, but really at other positions as well. He hired a staff that, if you think about it, I mean, Sean Lewis was a head coach at Kent State.
Mike Zimmer's the defensive analyst on his coach. Mike Zimmer's like one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL in the last 20 years.
So think about the staff that he's constructed too, in order to be able to, Charles Kelly, who took a lot of things out of the playbook from Nick Saban. That pick by Travis Hunter had everything to do with how they end up playing the three receivers to that side when you have an offset back. And so, all these different things that those coaches, they brought along with them, and they put their players in a position to succeed. And Deion oversees all of that. So, of course, he's a good coach. Of course, he's a great recruiter. I mean, think about the pitch. Because really, you don't just recruit the player, you recruit the parents.
Yep.
How many parents are going to say, no, I don't want Deion Sanders to come in my living room?
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? Arguably one of the greatest dual sport athletes ever. I mean, one of the greatest football players ever.
He's the greatest cornerback of all time. It's not remotely close.
He's in every single living room with the opportunity to preach, and he can preach, and he can recruit. And I think the last thing I'll just say, again, it gets lost in all of the show, if you will, is he's developing young men. When you actually are around him, you talk to him, there's a bigger picture to all of it. And that's the thing that most attracts me to everything that he does is it's not just about football. It's not just about getting to the league. It's not about just that. Like, he's meticulous with how he's like, hey, man, we got to pick this stuff up around here. Like, you're not going to be laying cups and stuff around. That might have been how we did it before, not now. Like, your locker's clean, like all the little things that the greatest players who are that detailed, they care about. Like, I was talking with LeVar Arrington today about. LeVar played with them in Washington. And he was like, dude, he used to vacuum in front of his locker. Like, that's how detailed he was and how specific he wanted things. So he's a great coach. He's a great recruiter. He's all of it. He's the only guy that can do, and I said this to Leger when I walked in, like, something felt different about this past weekend with college football. And I know there was no NFL, but maybe
it was the terrible graphics that Fox used on the number 17 above the TCU.
It feels like college football is becoming more national than regional. And maybe it's the conference realignment. Maybe it's a brand like Dion who kind of just is football. It's not just Colorado or Jackson State or the past player. It's becoming closer and closer as it kind of continues to shape and form into a sport that mimics more what the NFL is. And I'm not going to say it's ever going to compete with it in that light because it's so different. But I'll be honest with you, the presentation, I think that, especially going over to Dublin, Ireland for that and seeing how it hit like a European crowd and how that European crowd kind of looks at it as compared to like an EPL team, you kind of go, man, this has legs to it. And I think it's still growing where the NFL is like this, it's 32 teams. It's kind of is what it is. It's like, what's their next change? What's their next step to continue to grow the audience? Like, I don't know the answer to that question outside of playing more games. Like, are they going to expand to a couple more teams? Or like more international cities? Like, those are big steps that I don't know if the NFL wants to take. And meanwhile, like, college football is kind of becoming something where, like, we got a bunch of West Coast teams playing East Coast teams. Yeah. Like, you didn't used to care about Stanford, Cal. Now you might, because NC State might have to play them now in the ACC in the future.
Might have to play them. They're just going to be in the ACC. We've already talked about how like
these conferences are so big, you might see them once every 2-3 years.
2-3 years, yep.
Well, that's fine. I'm going to go to California for a road trip, and I'm definitely going to go. We're pumped about SMU, like Dallas, a Dallas road trip, little home and home, all day long. Also in college news, speaking of the ACC, great segue, Brady. Just really impressive work by you. Clemson and Duke played, and buddy,
my goodness,
Dabo Swinney. Look, Dabo has you. I don't know if you guys read follow message board geniuses on Twitter, or if you go into, okay, look, we NC State fans, we don't have a lot to hold on to. Okay. So we oftentimes will enjoy the schadenfreude of other teams' failures. And that's what we're doing here with Clemson. Like I've got a text right where we've got posts of like the Clemson message board. These fans really want Dabo out of there. And I just sort of wonder, like, do you think how concerned should Clemson fans really be? Because he did have he won all his titles with two generational quarterbacks in Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And now it's like, he's lost a bunch of coordinators. Like, how realistic are the concerns of Clemson fans about Dabo Swinney?
I think they're really real when you look at the fact that he doesn't want to adopt NIL transfer portal as part of their program. Mm-hmm. He's kind of been resistant, outspoken against it. And one of the things that struck me in looking at the past 3 years, were really around COVID and then afterwards, that's when all those things have come into play. They've lost 3 games twice in that 3-year span, okay? When all this stuff came to fruition and teams started saying, we need to adapt to this or we're not going to survive.
Behind, yeah.
He's been resistant to it. And if you go back to the previous 5 years when they won the national championship and they were averaging, I think, almost 14 wins per season, which means they're getting the playoff, they're winning in the playoff, getting to the national championship. They only lost 3 games once. That was back in 2014. And so it's pretty evident, like, what's taking place is a lot of these other schools obviously are tapping into saying, we're going to use the transfer portal to supplement our roster, find some pieces if we need them, find a quarterback we feel like the guy we recruited is not that. And then beyond that, I also think there's been, just people kind of taken away from his cupboard. I mean, how many coaches has he lost now, which eventually drains you as a head coach? We see that from time to time, too, at the NFL level, sometimes at the college level. Brent Venables, now head coach at Oklahoma. You obviously lost, Tony Elliott, and you ended up replacing now Garrett Riley with your former offensive coordinator. But again, the reality is that all wears on you, I think, as a head coach and as a program. So I think it's kind of twofold. It's like the inability to adapt, but it's also what they've lost to on that coaching staff.
And just on the Riley thing too, like there was some buzz that like the administration kind of made him go outside the family to get an offensive coordinator to replace, because he wanted to promote within, and then he went and got Riley. And I mean, but now like dudes, the season's, I mean, like you lost to Duke in week 1. Your season's over.
Yeah. And if you look at it, right, we were talking about Deion earlier compared to Dabo Swinney, right? Deion's relatable, right? The players, they galvanize around him. They like talking to a guy that's a Hall of Famer who's done it at the highest levels, right? You talked about it. Deion's kind of adapted into the transfer portal. I believe they had the most transfers come in out of anybody in college football, where Dabo Swinney is not a big fan of NIL, not a big fan of the transfer portal. So we've seen that take a hit when it comes to Clemson. And me and Brady were talking about this yesterday. I mean, DJ Uiagalelei is probably sitting back saying, y'all thought it was my fault. Like I was the issue, right? And he looked pretty good at Oregon State in week 1. And everybody thought Cade Klubnik was going to be the savior for Clemson. And we saw that offense falter in the red zone multiple times. Can't turn the ball over in the red zone, especially when you're already going to probably get 3 at that position. So to me, Clemson's in real trouble, right? You lose to Duke. I believe they still have Florida State on the docket, Notre Dame on the docket. Like, the chances of them getting to the playoffs are probably slim now.
They got to play NC State, I think, too.
Thank you.
My bad. NC State.
In Raleigh.
NC State
It's all right. Sorry. I'll let you slide on that one.
But what I will say is, Brady, you know this, week 1 to week 2 is when you usually make your biggest adjustments, right? Week 1, you're going to see some sloppy play. You're going to see pre-snap penalties. And that's what happened to them. You just hope that you're on the other side of that and come out with a win. They unfortunately didn't, because they turned the ball over at unopportune times, and they end up losing that game. So it's a tough schedule down the road for them. I don't know if they make the playoffs this year. I know a lot of people had them penciled in. I didn't, just because of the turnover at the quarterback position, the turnover at the coordinator, like you talked about. I think over time, and this is college football, like you never want to stay in the same place. You want to elevate, but they've lost a lot of coaches over the last few years.
Yep, sure have. By the way, they were, I believe Dabo said in his post-game press conference, they were Clemson in the history of the school, 108-0 when they rushed for 200 and passed for 200, 58-0 under Dabo. And dadgummit, I don't know what happened, but we lost that game. All right, we're going to take a break.
Real quick, last thing, though. There's nothing worse, though, than LSU this past weekend.
Oh, man.
I mean, just because we are going to transition NFL, and there's a guy named Harold Perkins Jr., and when you take him off the edge from rushing and as a spy and as an off-the-ball linebacker, like – you literally just gave Jordan Travis and Florida State's offense quite possibly the easiest game plan to go up against. More time to throw to Keon Coleman, whoever else. I mean, it was ridiculous watching.
Let's not forget, they're probably best defensive lineman, Mason Smith, wasn't in that game.
Right.
Let's not forget in that first quarter before he tore his ACL last year, he was wreaking havoc up front. And now you take him out of the game and Perkins, and you drop him in coverage instead of rushing him. I don't understand the game plan on defense at all from LSU.
That's a future top 10 pick.
The game plan was to get gashed by Florida State. I mean, the game plan might be for Brian Kelly to spend a little more time with my family.
That works.
I don't really feel bad for Brian Kelly ever. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I'm sorry, my family. When we come back, Travis Kelce banged up for Thursday night's NFL kickoff. Big movement on the point spread. We'll tell you about it next. Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions are kicking off the NFL season on Thursday night. We did just talk a bunch about college football, but like you said, Brady, it's the new NFL. It's the new. It's basically the new college, the new football, or the new NFL football.
It's slowly getting there.
Yeah, except for Dabo Swinney, who just won't pay players over the table. The Travis Kelce suffered a hyperextended knee on Tuesday at practice. The point spread moved immediately from 6.5 to 5.5 overall DraftKings. It's already down to 5 today. It's been dropping steadily with the Chiefs only favored by 5 against Detroit on Thursday night. Brady, obviously Travis Kelce matters a ton. You see that reflected in the point spread, but from a schematic standpoint, if he were to miss this game, how big a deal is that for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid?
I think when you factor in Chris Jones is there defensively, you start to ask the question, all right, you won a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. You were able to get through all of that. I mean, how much longer and how many more guys can you lose before you start saying, like, Yeah, they need some of those star players. And I think Travis Kelce is that guy that's the engine that makes things go, at least in the passing game. Clearly, Mahomes, the quarterback, can distribute the football. It's all good and great. Travis Kelce's always been that number one target. He moves the sticks. When he looks to get an open field and create, he's going to look for Kelce as well. So not having that guy as not only a sticks mover, but a red zone target. And I think one of the things, too, where his roles become even more prevalent is because so many teams played soft coverage against him. I mean, even with Tyreek Hill, they're not going to give up the big plays downfield. And so it's allowed them then to throw underneath to Travis Kelce. So it'll be interesting to see if Noah Gray and Blake Bell can fill in that role in any sort of capacity, or is it one in which you say, all right, we're going to play with some different personnel groupings to get to the concepts we want. Maybe you even look at it and say, we're just going to bring in an extra offensive lineman to protect up, and we're gladly going to utilize the other 4 eligible receivers however we see fit to get into the mismatches and get into the formations and things we want. I mean, this injury happened Tuesday before a Thursday night game.
Man.
It's kind of hard to be able to make any sort of wholesale changes in regards to your scheme for either team in this case, Dudes, as far as like what you're going to do between Tuesday and Thursday night.
And if you look at Detroit, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has a lot of experience of covering Travis Kelce. So I probably guarantee you Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, was going to have something schematically where they bracket cover him, but for a good portion of this game, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was probably going to guard him. And you talked about it a little bit. I think this is a little different than losing Tyreek Hill, right? Tyreek Hill was a big play receiver. He could always get behind the defense. But if you talk about a quarterback and tight end being in sync, there's no greater combination than Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I mean, Brady, 7 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons at the tight end possession. You talked about schematically what he means to this team. And let's not forget in the red zone, which is pivotal. How many times have we seen Andy Reid draw things up to get Travis Kelce open, even when they double team him in the red zone? So you take that away. And again, yes, you have Superman. You have the reigning MVP, Super Bowl MVP. But how much is expected of him to do when you lose a Tyreek Hill, you lose a Travis Kelce? You talked about it, Chris Jones not being there. And then that whole defensive front is different, right? Carlos Dunlap isn't there. Frank Clark isn't there anymore, right? Chris Jones won't be there. You paid Charles Omenihu. He's suspended for the first 6 games. So now George Karlaftis is going to have to take a leap. That secondary were all rookies. You would think they'd be a lot better this year. But again, the onus is going to fall on Patrick Mahomes. I look for them to be a little bit more balanced than they were last year, running the ball with Isaiah Pacheco. But he's coming off injury too. So is he going to be on a snap count? We don't know. So I think this is a massive loss. The biggest thing is it's not Thursday night's game. It's how long is Travis Kelce going to be out? That's the question you need to ask.
And he's missed really, when you look through the years, and Will, you can fact check this. I think he's only missed really 1 game during the course of the regular season.
Games.
Like, he sat out some week 17 games back when it was a 16-game schedule, but he really doesn't miss games often. So I wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't try to suit up. I mean, you're talking about a hyperextension. If there's no structural damage to it and there's no concern there, maybe he tries to suit up. But I think the line would tell you, I don't know how effective he's going to be.
I wouldn't start him.
He might be a decoy. He might be a guy who's out there for some limited plays to see what he's capable of doing. It's just in 48 hours time, it's going to be really tough to be making that feel much better. But again, I'm not ruling him out at this point only because he is such a tough dude.
Well, this is my thing, and I'll let you jump in here, Will. Like, Brady,
no, they're playing.
Oh,
sorry. Yep.
They're playing Thursday. So if you rest him today, you still get 10 days before your next game. Now, again, we don't know the extent of the hyperextension. There's been different rumors out there. I'm not a medical professional. I hyperextended my knee in one practice, and to Brady's point, there was no structural damage. I actually was able to practice the next day. So it just depends on how serious the injury is. If it's a risk, I wouldn't even play him on Thursday because you need him for the long haul. Like, there's no need to put him out there and potentially get more damage.
Yeah. So to Brady's point, since I'm stat boy here, Travis Kelce is not. Travis Kelce has not missed.
Boy.
He's never missed a game to injury in his career. He sat out, like, he's played 15 games before, or 16 games, I think, last year, because they clinched the 1 seed or clinched the division or whatever it was. No moving to the playoff standings, and I think that really can sort of inform Andy Reid's decision here, right? Because Andy Reid sits guys out in week 17 when they don't need to, or the final week of the season, week 16, week 17, when they don't need to play. He's very, very consistent about that. If you look at Andy Reid and how he approaches the preseason and how, like, the playing time for certain players, he's very, very consistent about it, even when it's shrunk down to 3 games. And I think you're going to see him probably be protective of Travis Kelce. Like, this Chiefs team is going to win And now Jason Kelce says, I think he's going to be good to go. I really do. On WIP this morning, so which is interesting for the Eagles center to be saying
that's why I said, like, we're all acting because of the line movement. Like, again, he's not going to play this game. It's likely he dresses, he tries to play, and then if he can't go, so be it, right?
Right.
I mean, let's not forget too. You've got the third quarterback designation. And, I'd have to look back at the Chiefs roster. I'm not even sure if they're carrying 3. If they are, that guy doesn't necessarily have to count against the active game day roster until they want to activate him. So, even teams that want to dress 3, or if they only dress 2, they can kind of play with the numbers a little bit, especially for a situation like this where it's Travis Kelce. You're gonna go up until game time before you make a decision and really exhaust all efforts to make sure he's potentially able to go. And so, again, we don't know the specifics of the injury. But from hyperextending stuff before, it really comes down to kind of pain tolerance and if there's any potential issue for greater damage. But I think the line movement more tells you the lack of effectiveness that maybe he'll even be able to have in this game.
Yeah, or even like a little bit of protection for the books in terms of like there's been a bunch of action on the Lions, and Kelce is worth that much. I mean, it's pretty hard for like a one player to be worth. I mean, I know this sounds crazy.
One player that's not a quarterback.
Yeah. Exactly. Correct. Yeah. Like quarterbacks are, I mean, I think generally like if you're talking like 4 points is a huge number. And I know maybe like it seems like it should even be more, but like, let's say I remember like Kyler Murray was ruled potentially out like early in the week and like the line shifted 5 points. Like it's crazy how little even a quarterback can matter that much to the spread. And so I think a little bit of an overreaction here, maybe by Vegas. I kind of like the Chiefs -5 even more now.
I did too. Like, I think I already liked the Chiefs beforehand. Obviously, even with the injury, I'm like, it's all right. This group will figure out a way of finding the right matchups. And you talked about Aaron Glenn before. This pass defense was one of the worst in the NFL last year. So they'll have every opportunity, I think, to find some of those mismatches and try to expose some of that. And we'll see if Detroit can adjust.
Yeah, Chris, and it'll be interesting, right? Because now. My bad, Will. Kadarius Toney is back healthy now. He's coming back. Sky Moore.
He was limited Tuesday, though.
Yeah, but I think he's going to go. I think he'll give it a go. Sky Moore's back. Rasheed Rice, I've heard, is looking really good. Yep. Again, he's only a rookie, so you don't know what you're going to get from him. So this, I want to say it could be a blessing in disguise, especially if Travis Kelce's knee isn't extensively damaged and he's only going to miss a week or 2. Get some of these young guys reps, and the guys got to depend on these guys later on, during the season. So guys like Kadarius Toney, who they traded for, who they expect to take a leap, Scott Moore, who they expect to take a leap. Now you depend on them even more. Isaiah Pacheco, so
Marquez Valdez-Scantling as well.
Yeah, exactly. So,
former NC State legend.
I think this will be a situation where some of these young guys get some work.
I appreciate that. Man, I can't wait for you to I can't wait for you to shotgun this old toughie, and I'm gonna be like sipping your salty Catholic tears out of a tiny little teacup.
Oh my goodness!
Wow,
that was very visual.
Yeah, well, look, I got to get this in now because you're probably gonna smoke us on Saturday with. Although I thought anyway, we nobody cares about NC State. Chris Jones, Nick Bosa, and Mike Evans, plus Brian Burns. All guys are in these weird contract situations. Which one of those do you think affects their team the most, Deuce?
It's a tough because it's like with Travis Kelce going down, is Chris Jones the most important thing now?
Yeah.
Back and forth, you go back and forth because you still got Patrick Mahomes on that team. Honestly, to me, it's Brian Burns, right? If you look at you didn't say Nick Bosa, but you wanted to add Nick Bosa in there too?
Yeah. If I didn't, Bosa definitely counts for sure.
Okay, well then I'm saying Nick Bosa without a doubt. I mean, this was the number 1 defense in football, and just to put numbers out there, Brady, if you look at the seasons that Nick Bosa was healthy, the 49ers in 2019, 2021, 2022, they had 48, 48, and 44 sacks. The year where he got hurt in 2020, they had 30 sacks. Massive drop-off. We're talking about 17 to 18 sacks not there because Nick Bosa wasn't there. So this is an interesting situation because it seemed like the market was kind of set. I thought he should be the highest paid defensive player in the league for what he's done the last few years. Talk about coming off of ACL, over 15 sacks. And then you won up it last year and lead the league in sacks, 18 and a half, and win defensive player of the year. Again, the number 1 defense in football, and it starts with Nick Bosa. This guy never comes off the field.
Yeah.
Talk about making big-time plays on third down to get his defense off the field. He routinely does that, gets after the ball. To me, like, you would think with the CBA, right, and the way it's drafted up, this was to prevent players from doing doing this. But if you're a player, right, and you feel like this is the only leverage you have, all right, you don't want to pay me this. Let's see how the team performs without me. And we see some of these defensive linemen taking stands. Sam, Chris Jones, all of a sudden, Brian Burns they're all through in camp. Yeah. Oh, you want to give me my deal? I'm not practicing Monday. So we've seen a little shift, right? I bet the owners hate this, right? Of players deciding like, you know what? We saw what happened to the running back market. As defensive linemen, we're not going to allow this to happen to our market, because I've always said this. The league is run by passers and pass rushers, guys who can throw the ball and guys who can affect the passer, right? So that's why they're highly compensated for that. I think, to me, Bosa is the number one guy on this list as far as where it could affect the team. And honestly, them playing the Steelers week 1, you don't have Bosa there. I would not be surprised if that line shifts a little bit because of it.
You can make the case probably for all three of these guys, right? Like with Bosa, I think you look at the short sample size for Brock Purdy, you go, he's been fantastic. Can he sustain it? Can he continue that? Because, again, you're going to need the help of the defense at some point. I think you're going to go back to some of the stats and analytics with Jimmy G as quarterback and even Brock Purdy. They're kind of comparable in regards to just some of the numbers that they were able to put up. Eventually, those kind of come back down to earth. You're going to have to win some tough games, and you're going to need your defense to show out. So there's no doubt. I mean, Nick Bosa, I think you'd make the case, is probably the best of the three, because he's probably the best at his position, even though Chris Jones is right there behind Aaron Donald. And look, now that Travis Kelce's not going to potentially be there, but even then, like, if you're looking at the Chiefs and you kind of look at the fact, okay, you lost Tyreek Hill, that's one thing. He's on the offensive side of the ball. Like, you can have other guys that Patrick Mahomes can throw to and develop chemistry with and then build around. Chris Jones is on the other side of the ball. Like, can this defense really rally around not having Chris Jones and then elevate their level of play? We saw Mahomes do that last year without Tyreek Hill. It's a little different story when you talk about the opposite side of the ball. So maybe you make a case for Chris Jones, since he is their best defensive player. He's one of their top 3 players after Mahomes and Kelce. It'd be Chris Jones. And probably the second best defensive tackle after a guy named Aaron Donald. So you could probably make an argument for him. And then Brian Burns, I think the argument's just, look, you'd like your rookie quarterback not to be in a shootout every single week. And the best way to do that is to have your best edge rusher, right, who's out there with you. So it's not easy, but the reality is you can make a case for probably all three. And the thing I hate about this the most, because you talked about like players exercising the leverage to be able to hold out, is this is really their only recourse. And the risk run is the fact that what happens if San Francisco does okay or Kansas City does okay? And you're like, man, maybe they don't need me. It's like, oops. Because there is that always next man up mentality. And I think the funny thing for me is if you apply like the dynamics of the workplace and how leverage works with football as compared to like everything else. Like, imagine we were like, nope, I'm gonna sit this one out. I'm under contract, but I'm gonna give it a few weeks and just not show up. We'll see how CBS feels about this. They're gonna be like, get out of here, clown.
Next
like,
man
next man up. Like, we'll replace your ass with someone else in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I find it's hilarious. It really is when you break it down, because it's not relatable. I think that's the hard thing for fans, is they're like, what are you doing? Like, I get fired if I did what you're trying to do right now.
Like, if I was like, I know that we set the schedule up. I'm not hosting the show, okay? I'm not hosting the show doing give me money. They're like, that's cool. Breach is hosting. Get lost. You're fired. And like Nick, I mean, I probably should have said that out loud.
And then Breach with like the Brinson sucks hat. And he's just
today. They would change the logo from Pick Six to Brinson Sucks. It's like the Brinson Sucks podcast. But like, you're right. I mean, like, Nick, I think it is fascinating that the two teams, we're talking about like the two top favorites to win the Super Bowl, right? Or at least the favorites from each conference were in the Chiefs and the 49ers. And so you do feel like they'll be a little cautious, or they're willing to like play a little bit of chicken, and it's okay that, your best defensive player is going to be like, if he misses a game, he misses 2 games, you feel confident your team can win because your roster is constructed in such a fashion. But yeah, I mean, like Brian Burns, that shootout thing is kind of interesting too, because if you're in a shootout every week, if you're Bryce Young, it means you're taking a lot of dropbacks behind an offensive line that was not great in the preseason. So that's something certainly to watch. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Super Bowl predictions, MVP picks, maybe a little spicy hot takes. Next.
Here we go. This is all we've all been waiting for. Time for some football, baby. Brown ahead for the touchdown. Oh, my gosh, here he goes.
We can't wait for Sunday afternoons.
All right, welcome back to the Big Six Podcast. BQ and Dudes, you guys, have you ever done like official predictions? Like, do you have to do predictions?
Yeah. Like I have to do them on other things.
Yeah.
But here's what I like doing. And I think I was talking about with you, Will, about before the show. I know I was talking to Leger about it.
You mean we had the 10-minute phone call before the show? Yes.
Okay, there's a great website called playoffpredictor.com. I was telling Leger about it, but if you're at home, it takes a little time, but it's a great exercise because it really will change, I think, your perception of what you think. Like, if you ask me right now, not looking at anyone's schedule and how things shape out, where I think teams are going to be placed, it was not the way this spit out the way the season worked out for me, which I found rather entertaining. Now, it's also unrealistic because, as I told Leger, like in the AFC, I've got 3 teams who are all tied at 12-5.
Yeah.
And so there's a tiebreaker for who is the number 1 overall seed, and we can get to all that. But it really does change your perception of like how the season plays out based on home, away, bye weeks, international games, all those sorts of things when you start to kind of factor in those. So check that out if you really want to like see how you feel about the league as a whole.
That's a fascinating macro perspective to making predictions. I prefer the Brinson model. It's a proprietary statistical algorithm and analytical computing machine in which I determine
drink a few toughies. Yeah.
Just has a list and he puts his hand on. Okay, they're gonna win.
I did. It's just sort of like that. But I did do like an Excel doc where I picked. It's sort of the same thing. But I mean, probably spent more time than I could have if I'd known about playoffpredictor.com, which apparently Brady Quinn is an investor in. So for
and by the way, no hashtag ad here too. That's just free advertising.
Free advertising.
Dudes, you want to start? Who do you have winning? Who are your 2 Super Bowl teams? And is it like Pete Prisco, the Jaguars?
No, but me and Brady had an interesting conversation about that, and I'll let him tell that. I actually have, and crazy thing is, this is before the health of Travis Kelce, but I'm still going to go with the Chiefs. I'm going with the Chiefs and 49ers. I know that's everybody's probably favorite. Funny thing is, both teams are dealing with defensive stars that are in contract disputes right now. We'll see how long that lasts, but with anything, right, the 49ers, they've proven over the last few years they can win on the road in the playoffs, right? The Chiefs have not had to do that. They've won at home. And I just have faith in Patrick Mahomes getting it done. I mean, he's the great equalizer. And we talked about it, right? With Travis Kelce being out, right, I think guys like Kadarius Toney, who we saw step up in the Super Bowl, right? Sky Moore scored his touchdown in the Super Bowl, right? Isaiah Pacheco, we really saw like the last 8 weeks of that season, Andy Reid really tried to play bully ball, and it was effective because they have one of the best offensive lines in all of football. So I like the Kansas City Chiefs from the AFC side, and the 49ers, they've literally been at the cusp the last 2 years. NFC Championship game, went to the Super Bowl in 2019. I feel like it's Kyle Shanahan's year. I think the 49ers win the Super Bowl this year. I know you said we'll probably see some regression from Brock Purdy. And if you look at it, right, analytic-based, who he played those last 6 games of the season, right? Played a few backups, played some teams that were beat up, right? That game versus the Cowboys was a defensive struggle in the playoffs. I think he actually takes a step this year. Another year comfortable in this offense, right? We saw it kind of with Jimmy Garoppolo in his second year, right? I was with him in 2017. 2018, he gets hurt, so I don't count the 2017 year because he only played a little bit. But 2019, they went to the Super Bowl, and he played really comparable football. Kyle Shanahan doesn't need a guy to go out there and throw for 4,000 yards, right? No. 3,500 yards, just be effective with the football. Don't turn it over. We have a really good defense. I like the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this year.
Okay.
By the way, I mean, I'm sure that Katie Mox is watching and cheering you on.
Oh, yeah, she's probably going crazy right now.
And here's what I'd say, too, to that is you're only, especially with some of the favorites, clearly Kansas City, San Francisco, once the games start being played, these lines are going to come down.
Shift.
I mean, this is the best value you'll get them at, I assume. I mean, I don't think the Chiefs are going to get off to an 0-3 start, or the 49ers for that matter. So I think it's safe saying that, Will. Like, this is probably your safest spot for finding the best value for these teams, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's sort of like you will not see, even if the Chiefs started 1-2, they still wouldn't get longer than like 10-1. You know, because it's what.
That's still pretty decent value then to sit there and wait is what you're basically telling you people. Yeah. I don't think it's going to drop that much. I think even at 1-2, maybe it goes to 7-1, something like that. But it's not, to me, it's not going to drop to 10-1.
Yeah. Maybe.
No, I don't think the Chiefs will drop that low.
I mean, they start 1-2, and Travis Kelce isn't going to be. Travis Kelce banged up, and Chris Jones isn't coming around. Like, 10-1 would not be crazy for the Chiefs if they start 1-2. But I mean, again, like you're going to see these. Like, if you look at it with the MVP and somebody's saying this is year Kyle Shanahan loses his job, not the Super Bowl. That's not
what?
That is a hot take.
That is a ridiculous hot take.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 49ers would have to crash and burn for Kyle Shanahan to even be on the
literally.
They've been to the NFC Championship game 3 of the last 4 years. Like,
I was about to say, even if Purdy gets hurt, I think Sam Darnold comes in and just picks up where he left off. We've seen it.
It is one of the reasons, though, where like you just pay Bosa, right? Like I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, just, dude, come on. Like, you're in a window now. You've got a rookie quarterback in Brock Purdy.
Yeah,
just pay the man. Like,
you probably got maybe 1-2 years left.
Yeah, but I mean,
how everybody's getting paid over there.
Well, and before the other guys too start needing to get paid. So I just look at him like, dude, you just pay the dude. Like, move forward. Let's go. If you're trying to win a Super Bowl under a rookie quarterback contract, do it now.
Okay, what does the Brady Quinn football machine? Your proprietary advanced statistical.
Again, this is not like what my brain is telling me, because clearly I'm like, all right, why would you ever pick anyone other than the Chiefs? Why would you ever pick anyone other than like the Eagles or the 49ers based on those two rosters, how they look? And so as you go through the schedules, like, I found this really interesting. So my top 3 teams in the AFC was Jacksonville at the 1, KC, and Cincinnati. They're all tied at 12-5, but Jacksonville wins via the tiebreaker. So I was like, all right, that's kind of odd, but clearly, like, those are some of the teams that could be in the mix. And the reason why Jacksonville, is sitting at 12-5 is look at the division they play in. And if you really break down their schedule, it's a really easy schedule. Ridley now is one of their targets, could be a stud at wide receiver for them. There's some questions there, but still, that's kind of likely. And then as I went through the rest of the AFC, I got the Jets winning the division at 11-6. I've got the Bills missing the playoffs.
That was my hot take.
At 10-7, which shocked me. But as I kind of went through the schedule, I was like, all right, I mean, maybe it shakes out that way. I've got 3 teams from the AFC North. By the way, they all had double-digit wins.
Yep.
So again, like, I mean, maybe this is just my perception of the AFC North and how deep I think it's going to be. But unfortunately, the team left out in that division, I had Cincinnati winning at 12-5, Baltimore as a wild card, and Cleveland as a wild card, and Cleveland winning the tiebreaker over Pittsburgh. So again, it's fun to do these exercises. And then the final playoff team was Denver at 10-7.
Yeah, Denver getting there.
So 2 teams out of the AFC West. I think Russ has a better year under Sean Payton. And that's still a good roster.
So 2 AFC teams won 10 games and missed the playoffs in the Brady Quinn football simulation.
Which again, I think if you look at the conference as a whole, it can happen. I mean, there's obviously a lot of other teams taking some losses.
We went 10-6 and didn't get in.
I know I did in 2007.
That's right. I forgot that. There was the Browns only winning record.
The NFC, I've got Dallas as the number 1 overall seed at 11-6. I've got a lot more parity in the NFC. They win a tiebreaker over New Orleans at 11-6. San Francisco at 10-7, Minnesota at 9-8, winning the NFC North, and then Philly at 10-7 wild card, Seattle 9-8, and then Green Bay at 9-8, which I was kind of surprised by. But again, looking at the schedule, I think that roster's going to be able to help support Jordan Love. I was like, all right, but that leaves out Detroit, who I think I also had a 9-8, but they end up losing out the tiebreaker. A bit surprising. So I'll spare you the rest of the playoffs.
The Packers winning the division.
You don't need to go. You don't need to go game by game with the playoffs.
No, Minnesota.
Okay.
So I'll give you the conference championship round.
Perfect.
Jacksonville versus Cincy. Cincy wins.
Spicy.
I've got Dallas versus San Fran. Dallas winning.
Wow.
You got the Bengals and the Cowboys in the Super Bowl?
I do, and I've got Cincinnati winning the Super Bowl this year. So I look. The way this whole thing computed out, I was like, all right, I don't know if I feel this way. I did it a few more times afterwards, but I'm like, isn't that the whole point? Aren't we just supposed to blindly kind of pick who we think we're going to win based on home games, bye weeks, all these things, and live with that model? So this is the first one I did, and it's the one I'm living with, even though it's the one I do not feel good about. That is not realistic in any way.
Well, I got something for you. I believe the last 17 quarterbacks that lost in the Super Bowl haven't made it back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So that would change that trend if Joe
change
Burrow gets back to the Super Bowl.
I also think it'd be fun just to have Dallas in a Super Bowl, but then not win it. Like that would also, just because like the Cowboys fans would be nuts. Like, this is it. We finally made it. And then Joey B, just as cool as calm as can be, just takes over.
Yeah, so it's the last 17 quarterbacks since the first to start their first Super Bowl. Just because obviously it's Mahomes lost to. But no, it's a great stat. And then the Dallas thing, my favorite Dallas stat is that in 1996, this is like a hard anecdote to find online. But I've heard, I believe Mike Silver wrote an article about it, I think, or maybe like said something about it on NFL Network. But Jerry Jones has admitted that the night before the night before the Super Bowl in 1996, he prayed to God, whoever he made a deal with, you can decide. He claims it was a higher power. I tend to think it was probably a lower power. But he said if you give me this Super Bowl, I won't ask for anything else, another win ever again in my career. And he got the 96 Super Bowl, and he's gotten that since. So
he's gotten that since.
You know, he thought it was like a genie in a bottle or something. Like he like rubbed a little bottle and had 3 wishes, and that was his last one. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean it's sort of. You ever heard of a deal with the devil? Like it comes at a price. You get that Super Bowl. It's a Faustian reference there, Brady. Not a satanic reference. A Faustian reference.
Sorry, man. My kids have been watching Aladdin, so I was like kind of more in that realm of things.
Oh, so you think genies are real, right?
No, I wasn't going the other way with this conversation. Hey, Will, who are your Super Bowl picks?
I'm going with I think I'm going to take. I think I had the Bengals too.
You seem so confident.
It really does.
Well, I'm debating between the Bengals and the Jaguars. So I'm going to go Bengals over Falcons.
Falcons? What?
You do this every year. You pick like one or both teams that are unrealistic.
What?
Just so someone writes an article. Breach will probably write an article about this with a catchy headline to get clicks. And then it's like, come on, dude.
I actually need to double check. I think I may have sent in my Super Bowl picks already. And if that's the case, then I would have to change and get back to whatever I had before. I feel like I wrote like 5,000 words the other day, like basically because we had to break down every single, we have to do like division picks. You have to pick all the awards, for the website. I'm checking to see if I did do that. I'll let you know in a second. But larger point being, I think the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl this year as well. Joe Burrow is just a cool customer, man.
Which we also have to acknowledge the fact that it's this time of year, Will. As we make our preseason predictions, okay, Pete Prisco has once again picked his Super Bowl matchup. Not only does he not have Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl, but he obviously doesn't have them winning again, which if we go back to draft night, when the Bengals took Joe Burrow, he famously said they'd win 2 in 10 years.
Multiple Super Bowls.
So I look at it and I go, at what point is he actually going to pick the team that he was the prognosticator for to win multiple Super Bowls
this year,
with Joe Burrow? I'm like, what is happening? At some point, he's got to pick him to win one.
Well, what's interesting too is that Pete also has famously picked the Jaguars to win the Super Bowl previously. In 2018, after they went to the AFC Championship game and the Miles Jack was down, all that stuff, he picked them to win the Super Bowl in 2018. The following year, of course, that team famously went 5-11 and fired Doug Marrone 3 years later, after bottoming out with a 1-win season. So, Pete, good job cursing the Jaguars. Way to go. They would just appreciate you leaving
the worst advice possible. Like, I think it's pretty well known. He gives terrible advice.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change my Super Bowl pick.
Oh, okay.
Because I did
seemed so confident the first time.
I know. I was trying to remember who I'd sent to Cody, and I found it. I'm actually going Bills over Niners.
So not Cincinnati. Not after that 20-second discussion about it and then talking about Pete. You're not along with me picking Cincinnati.
So the Bills get their Super Bowl finally.
Bills finally get their Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm going to let you have the Bengals. I'll take the Bills.
Okay. That's not a bad split.
Yeah, that's a good split. Yeah.
We have to do MVP next?
Yeah. Who's your pick
for
MVP?
My bet, though? Because I liked the bet that I picked for this. I'm not picking an individual player.
Really?
I'm taking Mahomes, Burrow, who I think is going to win it, and Allen versus the field at plus 190. Okay?
I like that.
I'm taking those three versus the field, plus 190.
I'm taking the field.
The field's like minus 260 in that. So like you definitely should take the field versus those three because it's more likely that somebody else pops up and does it. But I don't know, man. Like I didn't think.
Is it more likely?
My pick, Justin Herbert. I mean, you look at it, Kellen Moore coming over there, and Brady, you know this.
I didn't even have him making the playoffs. I think I had him winning 10 games
I got him making the playoffs. Joe Lombardi literally, like, it felt like he was just withholding the talent that Justin Herbert had last year. They just refused to throw the ball longer than 10 yards down the field. Now, granted, their receivers were hurt. Jalen Guyton, their speed guy on the outside, was hurt. Now you get Quentin Johnson there. If Mike Williams and Keenan Allen can stay healthy, we know Kellen Moore is going to push the ball down the field. That's what he did with the Dallas Cowboys. So, you see that plus 1,200?
Last year, Justin Herbert had the, I believe, the lowest ADOT, which is average depth of target, in the entire NFL. And Kellen Moore, notoriously vertical in terms of his offense.
Yes.
So
correct.
2 questions for you. Obviously, I had the Jets winning the AFC East, which you have to think Rodgers would be in the discussion.
Yeah.
If in his first year there, they win the division, you know, they're hosting a playoff game, right? At plus 1,600, may a little sprinkle a little something on that. And then the other thing is with Dak Prescott, based on the model and everything I put out, it's like, look, dude, if they're the number 1 overall seed in the NFC,
you got a good chance to win it.
Yeah, you'd have a really good chance of winning it. So again, like maybe I'd contemplate that. But again, people probably think I'm drunk right now after what I just displayed from this playoff predictor model.
Well, I mean, I also like Herbert too, because again, nobody's thrown for more yards in their first 3 seasons, right? Yeah. And again, we talked about how he was handcuffed last year. Will, you just talked about it with Kellen Moore's offense. Like, they're going to threaten you vertically. Like, so I'm going to go on record and say that Justin Herbert will throw for over 5,200 yards this year.
Wow.
5,200.
That's a good bold prediction.
That might do it. You know what's not a bold prediction is when people say Trevor Lawrence. That's like the trendy pick to go with it. And I completely understand. Like, again, you know, another year with Doug Peterson, Calvin Ridley, you know, the type of weapons they have out around them, bringing back Evan Ingram. Like I get that. I'm just kind of like, all right, like everyone's on that bandwagon.
Better use Travis Etienne if they want to win. That's
let's bring up those odds again, because I want to make. I like this is. I think this is a really important point about Trevor Lawrence. Of the people on the screen, and take out Justin Fields, because 20-1 for Justin Fields is just stupid. I mean, that's dumb. Like the Bears would have to win 12 games. It's not happening. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, all in the same division. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, both in the same division. Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, same division. Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Tua, same division. The only guy, non-Fields, who is in a different division with a legitimate team that has a win total above 9 is Trevor Lawrence. And you need to win your division. And if you're the number 1 seed in your conference, and I agree, that's why Dak Prescott's not a bad look at 22-1. But I think that's the argument for Trevor Lawrence is if the Jaguars are the 1 seed in the AFC, which Brady, you had them as, Trevor Lawrence is going to get a look, man.
Well, the other thing is my best bet for futures, at least for this NFL season, was the over of the Jacksonville Jaguars wins. I mean, I think it's set at 9.5 or 10, whatever it's at right now.
It moved up to 10, yeah.
It moved up to 10. Like, take the over. I mean, I've got to win in 2 more games than that.
Think so?
I think at worst they push. I mean, when you look at their schedule, unless, again, they face an injury, something like that happens, which that's out of your hands anyway, they should easily win 10 or more games, in my opinion. Like, I think
the Titans are going to win that division. And, you know, I've been saying that for a while. I just think with Mike Vrabel and the way that he thinks, like the physical nature that his teams play with, I think people tend to forget they had one of the worst secondaries in football last year too, but everybody was hurt. Like Christian Fulton comes back. They were able to work things out with Kevin Byard in his contract dispute. I believe they have the deepest D-line in football.
D-Hop.
Yeah, and they bring in D-Hop. I think Traylon Burks takes another step. And people tend to forget when Ryan Tannehill's back is against the wall, for some reason, he just gets it done. So,
well, he's played well in the regular season.
That's what I'm saying. So, I think people are just giving this division to Jacksonville as if the Titans didn't win it 2 years in a row. We're winning it before Ryan Tannehill got hurt last year. They get back healthy. I think the Titans are going to win this division. I think
sometimes teams almost by sometimes the decisions they make create the potential for drama and additional pressure. And it's the last 2 years. You drafted Malik Willis 2 years ago. You draft Will Levis, this past year. It just feels like if things don't go right, that they'd be quick to kind of move on or make a transition, or there's going to be the additional pressure from the outside of like, hey, we've drafted 2 guys to replace the guy in there. And that's a tough world to live in when you're in for 17 games. Well, it's not Vrabel. It's more of Tannehill than the play and everything else. And it's a tough world to live in when you're a quarterback in that space. So I'm more curious to see how things will work out with Tennessee. Like, I had them actually winning more games. They had them as a second-place team in the AFC South. Obviously, Indianapolis, Houston, going through some more growing pains with rookie quarterbacks. So a little different story. So I'm with you. I think they're going to be better than people think. I'd probably take the over of their win total this season, but I still think Jacksonville's the team to beat, at least in the AFC South.
I mean, look, Pete Prisco says they're going to win the Super Bowl, so it's hard to argue with him. He's never been wrong. Pete's never been wrong about his Super Bowl picks. All right, that's going to do it for us. Make sure to join us tomorrow for our Week 1 Best Bets. Remember to like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube page for everyone listening to the audio-only version. Make sure you download, follow, leave a 5-star review, and tell your friends to listen and watch the pod. For Brady, for Deuce, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.